Well, so let me tell you very quickly about Spirit Quest Tours. I started the company in 1998, which, wow, that means we're coming up on a 20-year anniversary. I just realized that. How does that happen? Um, and I started it because I took a trip to Egypt and I had a spiritual awakening in an Egyptian temple, and it completely changed my life. And so now we do luxury, spiritual, and cultural travel all over the world. Bali, Bhutan, Morocco, Mexico, you name it. And Bali is one of the destinations that we've been traveling to the longest, and I've been to the most. And it's something that I really, really love, this deep exploration of other cultures, of other spirituality. And I've seen over and over again how this kind of travel can really have such a profound impact on people's lives and on the world. When we go into these places as sort of ambassadors, we not only change our own perceptions, but we help to change the perceptions of others about life in America, for instance, or life in the West. So I love it. I really do love it. And yeah, so Sarvesh, do you want to share with us a little bit about Ripple?
Ripple Yoga is in Seattle, Washington, and I built the studio in 2013. It was kind of a weird story in that I was in the middle of my first teacher training, and when I started that teacher training, I actually had no intention of being a yoga teacher. And about halfway through the teacher training, I left the job I was working at as a chief operating officer, and I said, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I opened a yoga studio. And in 2015, I moved to India for 6 months and studied in an ashram in Pondicherry. It was a 2,000-hour teacher training and it was in what is called a Gurukula, which means house of the guru. So this is the way that people used to learn yoga. They didn't walk out of their apartment down the street to the studio and go take a practice for an hour and then go back to work or whatever. That's kind of more of a function of Western culture. The way it used to be done is that students would go to and live near or with their teacher and study and live with them over a period of time. And if they had the desire to teach, their teacher would tell them when they were ready to do so. And sometimes this took years. So anyway, I ended up doing a 2,000-hour in-depth teacher training with them, which was incredibly authentic and just a mind-blowing experience. And since then, I've come back to the community at Ripple Yoga and then leading those style classes here. And it's very different and very beautiful. And the idea for this was to take, because the Balinese culture is very, very similar from a cultural immersion perspective, what we're doing on this tour, to the training that I had in India, is to take these teachings and weave them seamlessly into this itinerary.
Absolutely, yeah. So speaking of the itinerary, so we have two trips that are really sort of one trip or a trip and a half, maybe. We have the Ripple Yoga trip, and then we also have an Eat, Pray, Love trip. And they both happen May 14th to the 24th. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of overlap. The Eat, Pray, Love trip is something that we've been doing for 12 or 13 years now, and it's been really, really successful for us. So why Bali? Why come to Bali? Well, first of all, it is gorgeous. If you look up tropical island paradise in the dictionary, you'll see a picture of Bali. That's really not an exaggeration. The landscape is stunning. The people are wonderful, warm, welcoming. Balinese Hinduism, which is a very unique flavor of Hinduism. It's an amalgam of Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen, and some of the native religion, what's called the Aga Bali, which is an animistic religion. It's been on the island for thousands of years. So it's very fascinating and very inspiring. And as my co-host was just alluding to, it's something that is completely integrated into every aspect of Balinese life. And that's one of the things that is so inspiring and such a remarkable example to see how the dividing line that we typically have in the West, or oftentimes have in the West, between the sacred and the mundane, how that simply does not exist in Bali. Everywhere you look is a celebration of spirit, and everywhere you look is an aspect of gratitude and appreciation for life and the cosmos, and our place in it. And I have seen many people's lives very powerfully and profoundly affected by their time in Bali. It's called the land of 10,000 temples, which might actually be a little on the low side. That estimate. There truly are temples everywhere. It's also called the island of the gods. They have a beautiful cultural expression when it comes to sculpture, jewelry, painting, batik. And that's something that's been a part of their culture for centuries, and it has to do with sort of the cultural genesis of quote unquote modern Balinese, who are the kind of remnants of a royal court, a Javanese royal court that came to Bali centuries ago and primarily populated the island. And so all of the interior of the royal court, the painters and sculptors and poets and priests and advisors, formed the core of Balinese culture going back centuries. And so you see that tradition carried forward through today. So we're going to be staying in two places. We'll be going to Ubud, which is really the spiritual heart of Bali. It's kind of in the middle of the country, and it's just such a charming, beautiful, progressive little village. A lot of village, small town is maybe a better way to characterize it, but it really truly is the spiritual heart of the island. A lot of Westerners, a lot of expats there, a lot of arts, crafts, yoga, wellness, amazing food. We'll talk about some of that a little bit later. And when we're in Ubud, we stay at a resort called the Komunika Rasa Sayang. And it's right in the heart of Ubud. So we step out from our hotel and we're right there on the main street of Ubud. So everything is easily accessible to us. But then at the same time, when we're in the resort, it is such an oasis of tranquility. The rooms are massive. So this is one of the rooms. It's just a standard room, and it's huge. It's the size of what you would normally think of as a king suite, with a fully separate bathroom, king bed, and the level of service here is just phenomenal. And then for the second part of the trip, so we'll be up north for about a week. We'll be in Ubud for about a week, and then we come down to the south to a place called Nusa Dua for the last 4 days of the trip, and there we're going to kind of get our relax on. We'll be right by the beach, so we'll have beach, sunshine, ocean every day. And there we'll be staying at the Ayodya resort, which is, as you can see from this picture, truly stunning. It's quite different from the place that we're staying in Ubud. So one of the things we like to do is, provide a good contrast when it comes to experiences. So it's very luxurious, very beautiful, and a great way to wind up the trip, and get recharged and ready to come back. So let's talk about dining and food. All armies travel on their stomach. This is definitely something that we do not ignore. The food in Bali is generally spectacular. There's a lot of Western influences, but then there's also this deep undercurrent of Eastern and Indonesian cuisine. And so this is a picture from a restaurant called Bridges. When we leave Ubud, we have our farewell dinner here, and it's world renowned. There are a couple of world renowned restaurants in Bali, and we'll be hitting several of them. Bali is a vegan or vegetarian's paradise. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, no worries in that score. You'll eat better than maybe anywhere else on the planet. And we will be going deep into that aspect of Balinese culture. We'll be visiting a restaurant called Bumbu Bali, which is also a world-renowned place. And that is a piece of the breakfast that we get at the Komunika, which is custom made and delivered to your room to order every morning. And then spa and wellness is also something that not only will we be really focusing on, but that is a key part of Balinese culture. The Balinese are very, very oriented towards the well-being of other humans, and so I've very rarely encountered a wellness culture like I have seen in Bali. So we'll be able to have massage by the beach. We can have reflexology, you name it. And so we've got a number of really, really world-class spas that are lined up and available to us. And then, of course, one of the big focuses of the trip, or the trips, is yoga and meditation. So we'll be meditating every day, doing yoga at least once every day, probably more, depending upon the daily schedule. So do you want to weigh in on how you'll be approaching the yoga side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. What what we're going to do is take there are a lot of practices that we did in India that are very unique that I don't get an opportunity to really teach uh, um, in my studio. It's just not quite the appropriate place to do it. And what we're going to do is basically set up a yoga schedule with those practices that, for example, one of the most beautiful practices that we did in the ashram is and this will be for when we're at the beach, is we get up at before dawn, and we spend a half an hour before dawn in quiet meditation. And it's just a beautiful time of day to just be. And that's about the only way I can describe the experience. So we did this every day for 6 months, and we were sitting basically on a deck at the ashram overlooking the Indian Ocean. So and there's really nothing going on because none of the animals have woken up, and there's just this beautiful peace and serenity. And then as the sun crests over the horizon, we will begin with, as it was done in the days of old, by doing the sun salutation mantra and taking the energy of the sun, and then practicing the sun salutations is gratitude for the life that it gives us, because without the sun we wouldn't be here. And then move through a hatha practice. And I don't think that's something we would schedule for every morning, because this is kind of us also vacation, so we don't want everybody up at hey, every day we got to get up at 5 because we have to do this type of thing. But I want to offer that so that the people that wish to experience it can. Another practice. So the practices won't necessarily be at the same time every day either. They're going to be woven into the fabric of the agenda. And another offering that we're going to do is what is called the Pranava Om practice, and this one's done at night under the stars. And I think it would be a good one to do at the beach as well, with the quiet and energy of the ocean, and basically chanting Om the long way. It's spelled in Sanskrit, and practicing that. And it's also a beautiful practice because you just feel the vibration of the mantra of the universe. Well, we're also going to practice a yoga nidra session, which is a very old practice, and it's called nidra, means sleep, so yoga sleep, where it's basically a meditative state where the mind goes into the same sleep state that we do when we actually sleep, but we're consciously aware of it. It's a very, very beautiful practice. So, and those are just some of the practices that we're weaving in, but they're not I personally wouldn't want to go to a place like Bali just to take a power vinyasa class and go down the street. And obviously it'd be a lot nicer to take a power vinyasa class in Bali than it would at a studio in wherever city we live in. But the idea is, because this trip is so focused on the cultural immersion and experiencing what it's like to live it, the practices are all going to be geared in that direction.
Yeah, beautiful. And the cultural immersion is really one of the key things that we are seeking to share with people. So when it comes to what the experience of the trip is like, we go deep. We do that in all of our destinations. So we have really authentic experiences, authentic spiritually, authentic in every regard. So, we'll be out in the countryside. We'll be visiting quite a number of temples, going back to the idea that Bali is the land of 10,000 temples, and giving us an opportunity to really connect with this profound and beautiful spiritual practice that the Balinese have as a culture. And so, we'll learn about Balinese Hinduism. We'll learn how to pray and make offering the way that the Balinese do. We'll get our temple clothes. So here's one of our groups on the steps of Basaki Temple, and it's lovely because when we go into the temples, the way that we do, dressed and carrying offering baskets, and understanding what we're doing and why and how we're doing it, the Balinese just welcome us with open arms, and it's just such an enriching experience. Here's a Balinese priest delivering a blessing, and throw a
Guys, do
rock.
puja, love it.
Yeah, exactly. There are celebrations and ceremonies everywhere on the island, constantly. And here's an example, and this is just another illustration of the way that their spirituality is just part and parcel of the fabric of their lives. And so we're going to really connect with that and really find ways that we can um, obviously not bring the exact same practice back to the United States. That wouldn't be, appropriate probably for any of us, but to bring the spirit of that idea back into our lives. Um, and one of the things that, so you'll see these offering baskets, hundreds, thousands of them everywhere. You'll see them sitting on the seats of motorbikes and scooters or the dash of cars, and so again, it's just a really, really beautiful practice and a beautiful environment. This is a picture of a place called Tirta Empul, which is referred to as the Ganges of Bali. There's a tremendous and fascinating history and mythology that's built up around this place. But basically, this is a temple, and inside the temple are these pools that are fed by an underground spring that's perfectly clear, pure water that has not run dry in the course of centuries or longer, millennia. And so this is one of the places that we'll visit. We'll go into the pool, and you go and you do this kind of davening where you tip your head under the water from the spouts, each of the 13 spouts. And inside the spout is a Sanskrit word that's been carved in gold. And it's really quite fascinating because you are keenly aware, at least I am, and many other people have been, of the different energetic frequency and imprint of each of these spouts as it sort of carries forth the vibration of of that powerful Sanskrit word. And each spout, has a different spiritual and energetic meaning. And I have to say, once we've been through a whole ceremony here at Tirta Empul, you come out of the water, you really truly feel like you've been reborn. You feel fundamentally like a different person. It's a remarkable experience.
One interesting thing about that, Greg, is that we were I teach largely in Sanskrit, and
Ah,
the reason being, and I've been trained to read it and understand it to the extent that it and read the sutras in Sanskrit and things of that nature, and it is the teaching around it is fascinating in that the language is the oldest language in the world.
right.
And it is largely unchanged. And that language, because it's been used by so many people, carries a tremendous energy. It's just amazing.
Absolutely, that's true. Yeah,
Mhm.
and there is a fundamental power to the sound of Sanskrit that I believe is quite transformative. And yeah, you're going to be in a very target-rich environment in Bali because Sanskrit is everywhere. Even though the Balinese don't speak it, obviously, they have their own language. So they actually have three languages. There's High Balinese, Low Balinese, and then Bahasa Indonesian. So Bali, is a state in the country of Indonesia. So We're also going to be spending a fair amount of time visiting what are called Balians, which are Balinese shaman and healers. So on the Eat, Pray, Love side of things, we'll be going and visiting the son of Ketut Lier, who was the Balian from Liz Gilbert's book and who was her mentor. I was very blessed to have known Ketut for years, and we always brought our groups to visit him. And he transitioned probably just about a year ago, year and a half ago, and his son has taken over his practice. And so there's a deep and fascinating spiritual tradition of these Balinese shaman. So we'll visit Ketut's son, Neoman Lier. We'll visit another Balian that I know who's just a really powerful spiritual personality. And we're also going to visit and have a cleansing ceremony with this woman who's Ida Risit Ali, who is the high priest of Bali. And her story is fascinating unto itself. And our time with her is going to be really impactful and powerful. We'll be going to markets. So this is the big main market in Ubud, and this is one of the things I love, to be out amongst the sights and the sounds and the smells and the daily life. So this is as you can see, the produce market, and this is where all the locals come to both sell their goods and buy their food. And all the food that we have is probably going to come from this market if it's not grown on the grounds of the places that we're staying. So that's one of the great things about the food in Bali is it's macrobiotic, it's organic, it's so incredibly healthy. And we're going to have a lot of opportunities to interact and get to know the locals in a really deep and beautiful and authentic way. We will be going to a number of craft shops. So this is a painting studio. This is a place called Ayumas. And the artists that create the paintings are always working out front. We sit, we talk, they'll let you paint a little bit. You can ask them questions, learn about the paintings. And then there's, the gallery inside. It's just dazzling. It's just mind blowing, the work and the prices relative to what we are used to in the West. It's so incredibly cheap. And yet for them, this is still very much a fair trade kind of environment, because that kind of equity is just an assumption when it comes to Balinese culture. Interesting note about the Balinese money: they use what's called the rupiah, and the exchange rate is anywhere from 10,000 to 13,000 to $1. So you get kind of freaked out when you go to the ATM and you're punching in all those zeros, because you're gonna literally you'll ask for 1,000,000 rupiah, from the ATM. But it's cool to be able to walk away a millionaire. So they also have a tremendous jewelry making set of skills in Bali. This is something that they again have been doing for centuries, working in gold and silver, all made by hand. And so some of the finest handmade jewelry that you can find in the world, literally, you find in Bali, because they have skills that have been lost just about everywhere else in the world. This really fine work with these little tiny silver or gold beads is something that's very unique to Bali. So we'll be visiting a couple of jewelry shops, wood carving, stone carving, you name it. The arts and crafts in Bali are really gorgeous. And so that kind of wraps up most of the presentation. One of the things that we have for our participants today is that if you use the code when you sign up for the trip, use the code Love Bali. That'll save you $300 off the cost of the trip. And if you have any questions at all, want to discuss anything, feel free to reach out to me anytime. This is my number. That's my own cell, and my email address.